Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation Community Chat. This evening, it is me, Mindy Kilgrove Harris, with my friend Marigold hanging out. And for those of you who spend time with us regularly, you'll notice that our normal host, Melissa, is not with us this evening, but that's because she's taking a little break. We all need a little break from time to time. So we're glad you're here hanging out with us. I'm going to go ahead and let Miss Marigold introduce herself.
Hello, I am Marigold Webb, and I am here to talk about our lovely Jane Austen and our quotes and our. Oh, we're going to tell them what they're about. I don't know what else. I was going to say we were reading Miss Austen. That's what I've been reading this week.
Oh, are you? I'm trying to check out your bookmark there. How far are you?
I'm chapter 19, almost
Okay.
there. So close.
Nice. And I feel like this is a reread for you, right?
This one's not. This is the first time.
Oh, good. So thus far, are you enjoying it?
I am enjoying it. I love the little extra tidbits you get to learn about the character, especially about her sister, because I don't think I've known much about her. So it's really interesting from her perspective and her life.
Now, I know you, like me, love to listen to audiobooks. So have you jumped into any audiobooks this week, or are you strictly with Miss Austen?
I just finished The Trial by Kafka for my other book club for the library. So I just finished that one. I haven't started a new one because I'm like, I really want to get this through because my audio that I listen to at the same time, I have like 3 days left. So I'm like, all right, now I have to hurry up because someone else is waiting for it. And I'm going to, no way of getting it back after that in time. So I'm dedicated to this book.
You powered through that, a girl. Well, thank you for sharing. I'm Mindy Kilgrove Harris, and my books this week, since I was on vacation last week, it's one of those situations, where you're in the airport and you're on the plane. So I had lots of time to do some reading and some listening. I got through quite a few indie author books, which was great because, I love to support local indie authors. But then I also read, or I listened to Midnight in the Garden of Evil. Good and Evil, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Okay. So I went to Savannah back in December, and every person we met said, "Oh, have you read this book?" And I hadn't. I was so behind. So I made time to get Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil this week. And then I also, like, out of nowhere, I read Ali Condi's Match, or what is it? Match. I'm not sure if you've ever read it. It's young adult. A dystopian. It was kind of cool. And I tell you what, full disclosure, I powered through it in 3 days. Like, that's how into it I was. Yeah.
So it must have been good.
Yeah. Well, I didn't expect a whole lot, but then I was pleasantly surprised. So, and then I wanted to show you that because you and Melissa did such a good job last week with your book hauls. So I wanted to show you my gifts I got while I was on my trip. Because, if you're going to have a souvenir, why not get books?
Absolutely.
And I was so excited about this when we went to Shiloh Battlefield in Tennessee. And so I picked up the personal memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant.
That is very neat.
Yeah, my husband looked at this as I picked it up and he says, "Just a bit of light reading, Hermione." And I'm like, "Yep."
Absolutely.
But then when we ventured over to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, I got this one, which I thought you would love, Marigold. Yeah, Mountain Ghost Stories.
That's so cool.
Yes. So I am excited to page through this one, but you never know with ghost stories if they're going to be really spooky or not. So I might read it during the daylight.
I'm one of those. If I watch something or something, it has to be during the day. Or I can't sleep.
Oh, and there's Melissa joining us. She says, "Hello, excited to see what books you are sharing." And Melissa, we're so glad to have you joining us this evening. For anybody else who might be watching, please pop in and comment. Let us know where you are in the world and, of course, what you're reading as well, because we're always adding to our TBR stacks just for fun, because you never know what we're going to get into next. So let's see what we're up to this week as far as our chat goes. I'm going to share our screen here. There we go. Marigold, do you want to read this one out for everybody, please?
Ooh, Mr. and Mrs. Collins, Maria Lucas, and Elizabeth Bennet dine at Rosing Park.
Yeah.
Ooh. So that's like March 31st. So it's a few days. Mark your calendars.
I don't know about you, but especially when I watch the movie, not so much when I read the books, but when I watch the movies, this is one of my favorite parts when they get to spend that time in Rosings. So, what about you? How do you feel about that?
I'm trying to remember that part. I know it's really funny. Oh, this is when they meet.
Lady
Yes.
Catherine.
Okay. Yes. I love that part because anytime with Lady Catherine is hilarious to me. Then Mr. Collins with Lady Catherine is just a joy. I just love how he acts so awkward, and I feel like no one does it, but they're all just rolling their eyes.
Yes. Oh, well, they're also well behaved. If we were to go to a dinner like that nowadays, I think we would roll our eyes.
I would just be like, "Oh my gosh, here we go again."
So, the topic for our conversation this week is everything I need to know I learned from Jane Austen. And, as I was kind of prepping for our conversation this week, I have to tell you, I could have gone on for days. Because
Understandable.
I mean, there were just so many great points from the books. And as I was, diving deeper and I'm trying to, reason through some of them, I thought, this is something you could write a book about yourself, So,
Mhm.
right? Melissa's chiming in. She's saying such a fun topic. So I am so glad you like it. And please feel free to pop in and add things that we might have missed, as far as what you gleaned from the books or, something you just like to discuss. That's fun.
Absolutely. I think that's why people just still love Jane Austen because not only do they teach you a lesson, but they're always relevant. Everything in them is just relevant to today.
All right. Here's the first one. Treat your neighbors with kindness. Um, as some of you know, I finished my Emma reread not long ago. So a lot of these came from Emma because I feel like we can learn a lot from Emma Woodhouse. And here it
Absolutely.
says human nature is so well disposed towards those who are in interesting situations that a young person who either marries or dies is sure of being kindly spoken of. Um, and I pulled this quote, but I feel like there are plenty of others from Emma where this is kind of the overarching theme of that book, right? To be
Absolutely.
nice to our neighbors. And are you a big fan of Emma? I'm not sure if I've ever asked you that.
I am. I wasn't at first when I started reading them. Like she wasn't always my favorite, but again, kind of like Persuasion, as I've read them as again over the years, I find like certain parts that I feel like more connected to. So I really enjoy Emma now, whereas before I was like, it's okay. She's kind of obnoxious, but now I enjoy her character and her flaws and how they kind of evolve. So I just again, as you evolve, you read, and things get better.
Here we have another tip from Emma. Never overstay your welcome. And I'm sure people it feels like a common sense piece, right? But so often when guests come to visit or when we are the guests, we go to visit, we make that mistake, don't we?
Yes. And I want to say, Melissa just said Miranda is absolutely the best Miss Space, and I totally agree.
Here, yes, she is. I think you're right because she does such a good job with hitting the highs and the lows of Miss Bates,
Definitely.
where she's kind of a little bit rambling, but then when her feelings are hurt, it's you kind of feel that pain, I
You
think.
do. It's so funny how I felt exactly when I watched it. I thought like, oh gosh, she's ridiculous. And then you're like, oh my God, don't be so mean to her.
Here we have, but my dear sir, cried Mr. Weston, if Emma comes away early, it will be breaking up the party. And no great harm if it does, said Mr. Woodhouse. The sooner every party breaks up, the better. I love Mr. Woodhouse.
I agree.
You know, it was a challenge to pick between the versions of Mr. Woodhouse because I think the actors who portray him are all very talented and bring a little something different to the role each time, but I like them all.
I agree. I do like the modern one only because I couldn't help myself laughing so many times with him in this draft. I mean, like they're all in there and all the different versions, but that one just really gets it with the draft.
Melissa's telling us she's all wrapped up and cozy right now, so she's feeling very much like Mr. Woodhouse. We can certainly understand that, where there's just some days you want to be comfy and cozy.
Absolutely.
Next, we have Be Bold. Again, it's one of those things that I'm sure you could read a lot of different books and come away with that same impression. But in this case, we have I do not know whether it ought to be so, but certainly silly things do cease to be silly if they are done by sensible people in an impudent way. Uh, I'm not sure if you remember, like, I just remember it because I read it recently, but this is when Frank Churchill goes out of the blue to get his hair cut.
Yes.
And, you know, Emma doesn't know that he's really gone to London to buy that beautiful piano for Jane Fairfax. So it's just, he went to get his hair cut. But she reasons through it this way, where it's like, oh, well, you know, he was dedicated to that haircut. So
Absolutely. And I like the Be Bold because I think that embodies Jane as well, because she was so bold to try to publish her books when women really weren't being identified for writing. So I think some of these can really be connected to her herself.
mhm. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I just want to point out in this picture, and maybe you'll catch it before I say it, but if you look at this picture, how is Frank Churchill being bold here?
Well, they're touching. How dare he?
That's exactly what it is, though. I mean, she doesn't have a glove on her
No,
hand, and he's grasped it, and it looks like he's gonna plant a little kiss on there. So scandalous.
I'm very scandalous. I was going to say they're touching.
The thing is, I know which scene this is from the film, but for the life of me, I can't remember ever registering before that she, you know,
No.
it was her bare hand and he was reaching out to touch her. So certainly a bold man. Embrace falling in love. Now, you know, like you said with Be Bold, I sort of feel like this could represent any of Jane's books, because all of our, especially the heroines, at some point they buck the idea of falling in love, or maybe it isn't quite what they want it to be or quite what they expect.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like
So go ahead.
I was gonna say they eventually have to get to this point. It takes a while for some, but they're like they have to embrace it to get there happily ever after.
Yeah, when you see this, which one come, like, you know, it's from Emma, right? That I'm still talking about here. But if you were going to just say this, which book would come to mind for you?
I always thought of Pride and Prejudice because it's like she has to embrace it at the end that she's in love. Like she's even though she kind of fights it, doesn't want to, she kind of like realizes after, oh no, I think I love him.
Well, and we have that great moment in the beginning, you know, when Elizabeth is talking to Jane, and she says, if I ever marry, not that I want to, you know, but if I ever marry, it will be for love. So in the beginning, she really isn't embracing that idea because she's never found anybody who incites those feelings in her, you know.
Absolutely.
But since this one's from Emma, this sensation of listlessness, weariness, stupidity, this disinclination to sit down and employ myself, this feeling of everything's being dull and insipid about the house. Oh, I must be in love.
Oh my goodness.
For me, this is part of the reason I enjoyed Emma so much this time around. Because of little asides like this, where we're in Emma's brain and she's reasoning through things, and she's so much fun. Oh, everything's boring, so I must be in love.
The Dawn's honor.
Well, and it's funny because we see this pretty early. What is that, chapter 30? And this is when she's thinking about Frank Churchill. But then when she does develop those feelings for Knightley in the end, it happens in that same manner, where it's that that bolt of lightning hits her, and oh, I love him. I don't want him to marry Harriet. I want him to be with me. I pulled this one though because I wanted to ask you: have you ever seen this adaptation?
I have, a very long time ago. I think it was one of the first ones I've seen, and then Gwyneth Paltrow, I think I saw next. Obviously, I think came after. But yes, this is the original one I saw, and I don't remember exactly how I felt like the first time because it's been so long ago. But I do remember seeing. I think she's both all the actors were pretty good in this one.
Well, for me, I didn't watch this one until after I'd watched Love and Friendship. So I saw Kate Beckinsale in the role of Lady Susan Vernon.
And having a little different spin on this one. I think this was more accurate with the age difference too. Like he looks a lot older, so I feel like this is more believable on that part of the. He could have known her when she was younger, much younger.
Yes, I think you're right. I mean, I'd have to look it up, to see what their true age difference was, as far as the actors and actresses there. But I think you're right. As far as looks go, this is closer to what I was thinking. Yeah. I kind of feel like I want to rewatch that one. And Melissa says she hasn't watched it in so long.
Well, maybe we'll have to watch this one all together.
Yeah, group watch party. Next, we are segueing away from Emma, although she certainly has plenty of moments where she needs to acknowledge her faults. And this is from Pride and Prejudice. Do you want to read this one, Marigold?
Sure. She grew absolutely ashamed of herself. Of neither Darcy nor Wickham could she think without feeling that she had been blind, partial, prejudiced, absurd. Absurd.
It's such a oh gosh, I feel like she's kind of harsh on herself here. Elizabeth, of course, but
Absolutely.
she's right too. And I think that's one of the things that Jane Austen did so beautifully. And we talk about this, but scholars talk about this as well, where she just understood human nature so well. Because when you consider she wrote Pride and Prejudice when she was still young.
So young, yes.
Yeah, but she was able to look at a person's faults and their flaws and see them for what they were,
Absolutely. That's why I feel like she just, again, relates so well, is because I feel like she spent so much time like watching people, identifying their personalities, that she could create these characters and it be so real like because it was something that she had, just a great observer of everything.
Yes, a great observer of human nature. I wish I could do the same thing. Like I wish I were able to sort of reflect the way she does, and then she has her characters do as well. And this is such a great moment, and that's why we've got the Elizabeth reading the letter here. It's so good to see her in that way.
Absolutely.
All right, why don't you read this one as well, please?
I'm sure the long ones. No, I have made no such pretension. I have faults enough, but they are not, I hope, of understanding. My temper I dare not vouch for. Sorry. It is, I believe, too little yielding, certainly too little for the convenience of the world. I cannot forget the follies and vices of others so soon as I ought, nor their offenses against myself. My feelings are not puffed about with every attempt to move them. My temper would perhaps be called resentful. My good opinion, once lost, is lost forever.
And that is, of course, our main
Darcy.
man, Mr. Darcy.
That last line I just love. It's one of my favorites there too.
I don't know about you, but I certainly, over the last couple of years, I have read a lot of articles and even books where people posit that Mr. Darcy is the perfect man. They sort of take Caroline Bingley's approach and they say, "Oh, he's a paragon. He's a man without fault." Um,
Oh, I don't know about that.
well, and that is where we get this great scene, because he admits, he owns his faults.
Which
And
that part I would say would be a characteristic of a perfect man, because I don't know if there is many men that do that.
you're probably right. You're probably right. But I feel like this is a wonderful connecting point for Darcy and Elizabeth,
Absolutely.
where he's not making fun of himself, but he is being self-deprecating, which is so important because at this point she still thinks he's extremely proud.
Absolutely.
Um,
Like a turning point.
yes. So even though Elizabeth maybe doesn't internalize it, right?
Mhm.
I think this is a really good chance for her to start seeing who he truly is and how he feels.
Absolutely. That he's not who she thought he would be.
Yes. And of course, his faults, I think that so many of us share those faults, where you get an impression of somebody and it's hard. It is hard to change that way of thinking over time.
Absolutely.
Let's see what's next. Make right your wrongs. And this is also from Pride and Prejudice. This is an incredibly long one, and I'm sorry
Yeah.
for that. But
You got this one.
when I pulled it up, I stopped immediately after the first sentence, and then I thought, oh, but it's too good. We need to keep it.
That's the thing with her writing. It's all so very good. You can't just stop.
Yes. So here's what Mr. Darcy tells us in this section. I have been a selfish being all my life, in practice, though not in principle. As a child, I was taught what was right, but I was not taught to correct my temper. I was given good principles, but left to follow them in pride and conceit. Unfortunately, an only son, for many years an only child, I was spoiled by my parents, who, though good themselves, my father particularly, all that was benevolent and amiable, allowed, encouraged, almost taught me to be selfish and overbearing, to care for none beyond my own family circle, to think meanly of all the rest of the world, to wish at least to think meanly of their sense and worth compared with my own. Such I was from 8 to 28, and such I might have still been but for you, dearest, loveliest Elizabeth. What do I not owe you? You taught me a lesson, hard indeed at first, but most advantageous.
Hmm.
The sigh and the head tilt just come naturally, doesn't it?
It does. This is my favorite part of the movie. So it's
It's so good and such a revelation. And of course, the point here was to make right your wrongs. So not only does Darcy acknowledge these are my faults and this is how I've behaved my whole life, but this is after he has saved the Bennets by marrying Lydia to Mr. Wickham, and then also making sure Bingley gets reunited with Jane. Um,
absolutely.
so it's kind of triumphant.
Absolutely. I kind of like this part because it's kind of like, this is me, take me how I am. Like, it just put everything out there. And to him asking if her feelings were the same as last time, then he won't say it again. But he's just like, this is me, take me.
And she does.
And just,
Here we have take charge of your feelings. Now, this one comes to us from Sense and Sensibility. Do you want to read this one?
sure. I'm afraid, replied Eleanor, that the pleasantness of an employment does not always evince its property. On the contrary, nothing can be a strong proof of it, Eleanor, for if there had been any real impropriety, it would in what I did. I should have been sensible of it at the time, for we always know when we are acting wrong, and with such a conviction, I could have had no pleasure. Sorry, it's really small on my computer.
Sorry. I love that this quote, features the sisters because it definitely shows their varying personalities.
Mhm.
And the idea here of understanding your own feelings and being comfortable with who you are and how you truly feel. Eleanor's like, just because it feels good doesn't make it right, Marianne. And she's like, if it feels good, how could it be wrong? I love them. They're
They
so
are so
funny.
good.
And have you seen this version? I think this was one of the versions I was talking to you about recently. Have you seen this one?
I have seen it, but again, that was one of the older ones, so I hadn't seen it for a very long time.
Thanks for jumping in, Melissa. Yes, the life lessons just keep coming. Um, and as I was looking at this one today, and I've got it connected to Sense and Sensibility. I also think this one really relates to Northanger Abbey as well, because our girl Catherine, she in the beginning she's so malleable, where it's like she listens to everybody and she trusts everyone, and she's just this blank slate, right? And it isn't until the end where she does start to own her own feelings and really become the person she's going to be. And of course, her literature really defines her as well, until after she makes the mistake at Northanger Abbey. So I definitely think this is another one of those that can be in all of Austen's novels.
Absolutely.
Oh, this is yours, Marigold. Go ahead.
Yes, I said, do not let the past determine your future.
Yes.
I think it's probably one of the reasons why I like Persuasion so much is there's the lessons in those that, like, I have been so long in the habit of considering you as a man of pride.
And this comes from Persuasion?
Actually, that's where originally, I can't remember. I think I had sent it to you wrong. It may have been Pride and Prejudice, this one. But the message or the topic is what I feel like the whole book really is about, is the second chances. Or sorry, the second one is second chance. That letting the past determine your future is wrong, that you have to make your future. And she, I think, in the novel decides that she's not going to do the same thing twice.
That's such a lovely way to put it, where we know that she ends up with the same person, but it's not the same situation.
Absolutely. She made that mistake of letting someone persuade her elsewhere, somewhere else, and she's determined to make that right.
And that, of course, leads us to the next one that's connected.
Some people deserve a second chance. I say some because, if you have an ex, sometimes exes do not deserve a second chance. But sometimes if it's something that you were persuaded not to do, maybe that was a decision that you should have done. So you could have that as a second chance.
Well, I'm going to advance to the next one so you can read that line from Persuasion.
I am not to be persuaded to believe that you are so very different from what I have been led to believe. Which is exactly, she just determined not to be persuaded again.
And I feel like the idea here is another, like you said, that can cross throughout Jane Austen's literature. Except, I think for me, I think of Wickham, right? Where Elizabeth and Jane have the conversation about his experiences with Georgiana Darcy, and they decide, oh, well, maybe we should give him a second chance so we won't tell everybody how terrible he is. And he burns them.
Again, see, some people do not deserve a second chance.
Well, I think that's why you worded it so well, right? Like, some people.
May have been personal experiences, maybe book, Again, when you read them, they become part of you. So
this is our last lesson for this evening. We may end up doing some more life lessons down the road somewhere, but the last lesson is find pleasure in reading. And I'm sure if we both closed our eyes, we could probably recite this next little bit because it's everywhere. The person, be it gentleman or lady, who has not pleasure in a good novel must be intolerably stupid.
yes.
And that comes to us from Northanger Abbey when we have Mr. Tilney educating young Catherine. This is one of the moments, I know I'm always so hard on Henry Tilney, but this is one of the moments where I do find his character to be so relatable. Because in the novel, this is when she's owning that she reads novels almost exclusively, and she's kind of a little embarrassed by it. And he basically says, "Don't be embarrassed. Everybody reads novels, and they're great." And I like that about him. I appreciate that.
I agree. I like that relationship where he, teases her about things, but respects her at the same time.
Melissa's threatening to enter the chat to defend Henry Tilney.
We're agreeing. We like him. We like him.
We love him in this moment. And anybody else who's joining us, please, whether it's right now or later, please jump in and let us know, especially how you feel about this moment, but also about our characters. We would love to hear any life lessons we might have missed along the way, and anything maybe that resonates with you, personally, something that you have taken away from your Austen reading experience.
Because there's so many that we haven't even gotten to.
We have just a quick reminder to join us on Saturday, April 5th, which, will be here before we know it. At 3 p.m., we will have a live book club chat where we'll be discussing Jill Hornaby's Miss Austen. And this should be such a great discussion. I don't know about you, Marigold, but I'm really looking forward to it. And
I'm really enjoying the book, so I think it's one that anyone who loves Jane Austen will love, but I don't think it's just Jane Austen fans. Anyone who enjoys reading and learning about more in depth into the characters around someone who may like. So it'll be an interesting read.
And this will be right on time to finish up reading Miss Austen before it comes out here for us to view in the US. I know our friends over in the UK have already gotten to see the series, but speaking on behalf of myself and Marigold, I know we are both just so excited.
Counting the days. That's why I'm trying to hurry up and finish it before May 4th, because then we're going to be watching it.
Our final slide for this evening is just to share our April book club selection. I know it still feels like, how did March fly by so quickly? But for April, we have Jane Austen at Home by Lucy Worsley. And I have not read this yet, so I'm very excited. But Marigold, I think this is one of your favorites, right?
I have. I really enjoy Lucy and all of her creative ways of getting people interested in history. And this book I personally found very enjoyable because I also like to listen to with her voice and her antics. So it was very fun read because it wasn't just a boring history that you learn out of a book. She makes it very interesting.
I love that we're going to marry some history with, the literature here. So yay, we've got fun stuff coming up, and I hope that everyone will continue to join us every Wednesday night at 7:30 on the Jane Austen Literacy Foundation channel. Until next week, everyone have a good one.
Bye.